You know, I'm just gonna say it. 2025 has been an awesome year for movies. Yeah, you can point to a couple misfires, an abysmal flop here and there that shouldn't happen, but come on, we got 62-year-old Tom Cruise almost dying for our entertainment, the John Wick franchise spreading its wings with a spin-off that I thought was pretty awesome, and perhaps the year's crowning achievement, the most successful original film in a decade, Sinners. I've seen Sinners twice now, and while both viewings were great, I gotta admit, that first time, I had mixed feelings about the vampire part. I mean, the first half is a bonkers good execution of a historical prestige drama that nails a pace, richness of performance, and tone that's so difficult to achieve. Then, vampires. Why take a left turn into horror when you're nailing high drama? Why stray from what most directors dream of pulling off? Well, on my second viewing, I realized the vampires are essential. Not only because I enjoy films with a high kill count as much as the next guy, but because without them, the message would be impossible. Just try to imagine it without the supernatural element. Smoke and Stack, fresh off their lucrative run as bootleggers, try to build a juke joint, only to realize that the economic realities of the Jim Crow South make their plans untenable.
So what's the projection? 2 months, and we out of fresh cash.
So they square off against the Klan and maybe even win. But what does that change? The system that killed their dream is still standing, so then what? Where's the victory?
No matter how many guns or how much money, they gon' take it from you when they want.
Well, there wouldn't be a victory. Truth is, you can't punch generational poverty, you can't shoot a discriminatory legal code, and you certainly can't drive a stake through the heart of debt peonage. Under conditions like these, in order to depict triumph, black art often has to dip into the imagination. Director Ryan Coogler knows this well. With Black Panther, he gave us Wakanda, a utopian vision of what black civilization could achieve if colonialism and slavery never happened. Self-determination, economic independence, and technological prowess. But in Sinners, the fantasy isn't about conjuring a better world, but about making tangible a real triumph. Not the economic one that Smoke and Stack wanted, but a cultural one. One that only the Sammys of the world can bring. So what can the year's biggest surprise hit reveal about the way we mythologize the struggle of the marginalized? And while body snatchers, demons, and ghosts have long helped us bring form to formless historical enemies, why are vampires uniquely suited to dramatize this chapter of black resilience? Well, to find out, we'll have to meet a man at the crossroads, talk again about the most influential film of the last decade, and because I can't help myself, revisit the greatest Nick Cage performance of all time. Let's dive in. But first, a quick recap. After a few years bootlegging in Chicago, twin brothers Smoke and Stack returned to their home in the Mississippi Delta, flush with bags of cash and a dream to open a juke joint that brings a sense of joy and independence to their people. Together with their cousin Sammy, son of a preacher, Slim, a local blues mainstay, and a few other friends, the Smokestack twins transform an abandoned warehouse into the hottest spot in town. Opening night is a hit, but trouble is already brewing. Most patrons can only pay with company script, not real money, and Sammy's inaugural performance is so powerful that it attracts a coven of vampires led by Remick, who needs Sammy's gift to resurrect his people. One by one, the vampires begin to turn the town, including Stack, Stack's old flame Mary, and almost Smoke's love Annie. Smoke fights back and defeats the vampires, saving Sammy in the nick of time. But Smoke's not finished. When the Klan pulls up to the juke, Smoke takes them all down in a defiant blaze of glory, though not without being fatally wounded. In his final moments, he sees a vision of Annie and the family they never got to have, and dies at peace. Years later, Sammy has become a legendary bluesman, his music spreading far beyond the Delta. One night after a performance, he's unexpectedly confronted by Stack and Mary, still young as the night they turned. They offer Sammy immortality, but he refuses, choosing to remain human and perform one last song for them. The end. Now, before we dive in, I want to tell you guys about this video's sponsor, ZocDoc. Unlike Remick's vampires, we are not immortal, so paying attention to your health and catching problems early is crucial. I'm one of those guys who almost never gets a checkup, but I was recently able to find a GP I feel comfortable being completely open with. We even share a similar sense of humor, and that makes a world of difference in how I feel about going to the doctor. That's why I'm glad today's video is sponsored by ZocDoc. They help you find the right doctor before small issues turn into big ones. ZocDoc is a free website where you can search and compare high-quality quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. From mental health to dentistry, eye care, skin care, and everything in between, ZocDoc makes it easy to book in-network appointments quickly with more than 100,000 healthcare providers. You can filter for doctors by insurance, location, and specialties, and see reviews by verified patients so you can choose the best, most convenient care for you. One time, I had a brutal flu and wasn't about to spend hours on the phone with the insurance company. Luckily with ZocDoc, I instantly found a doctor who is wicked smart and genuinely caring. It also doesn't hurt that he likes movies. Now, he's my guy for everything. So don't wait until you're in a tough spot to find the right doctor. Go to ZocDoc.com/JaredBauer to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/JaredBauer. And now, back to the show. A few videos ago, I claimed that Get Out is the most influential movie of the last decade because it reinvigorated the social horror subgenre, sparking a trend of films that use genre elements to give form to real-world social anxieties. Well, you can mark down Sinners as another entry in that lineage. But whereas Get Out repurposed the body snatcher trope, Sinners adapts the vampire mythos. In Cold War era cinema, body snatchers were metaphors for ideological conformity. The fear was that a seductive belief system, basically communism, could invade your mind, erase your individuality, and turn you into an obedient drone. Jordan Peele quite cleverly tweaked this. Instead of an ideology inhabiting bodies to perpetuate its agenda, in Get Out, it's an elite class and race group attempting to hijack black identity, literally inhabiting their bodies to maintain a sense of cultural relevance.
Black is in fashion.
The fear pivots from communism colonizing American minds to elite white minds colonizing black bodies. Sinners does something similar but with vampires. See, vampires have long been rich territory for class analysis. Traditionally, they're depicted as reclusive elites who descend from their luxurious castles to feed off the blood of peasants. Substitute vampire for aristocrat and blood for labor of the working class, and you've got a popular materialist interpretation of the vampire myth. Basically, vampires stand in for the rich, exploiting the poor. For my money, the best iteration of this reading is in the Nick Cage classic, unironically one of my favorite movies of all time, Vampire's Kiss. Here, the aristocratic vampire who lives idly in a castle and feeds off the blood of the poor is reimagined as a 1980s yuppie literary agent who literally does nothing all day except harass his hard-working poor Latina secretary for funsies. It's the perfect update of the bloodsucker as capitalist dynamic, and every frame of Nicolas Cage in this movie is solid gold. Anyway, Sinners alters the metaphor to focus on another kind of exploitation. Instead of feeding off labor, Remick and his band of vampires feed off culture.
Must be that voice I heard from out here. Oh, it was beautiful.
He's drawn to the juke joint to feast on the creative force of the blues, a musical tradition born out of struggle, and because of that, both spiritually potent and uniquely vulnerable to exploitation. The narrator pretty much says it all at the beginning.
This gift can bring healing to their communities, but it also attracts evil.
The culture bearers of yore that are mentioned, Philly, Firekeepers, and Griots, hold their communities together through their musical talents, but those talents also draw predators who seek to mine and consume its power. Remick needs Sammy's music in order to resurrect his own culture.
I want to see my people again. I'm trapped here, but your gifts can bring them to me.
Which is essentially what's happening in the Jim Crow South. A dominant culture sustains itself by feeding off the life force of a more vital one. This dynamic is spelled out with Slim's super depressing monologue in which he recounts a time he and his buddy Rice got busted for vagrancy.
Me and my buddy Rice, his husband back and forth up the Delta, we get busted for vagrancy.
The police force them to play their instruments for an empty jail, and once the tunes start attracting people off the street, the cops load them up on a paddy wagon and parade them from town to town performing for white audiences. The little money they earn is quickly lost, his friend even lynched and murdered for it. This is a real-world example of the quote vampiric forces that seek to extract creativity in order to generate profit and infuse their own culture with renewed energy.
And Peckerwoods was nodding their heads, stomping their feet. Some of them was almost on the rhythm.
Here again is a clever retooling of an element of the vampire as aristocrats reading. The association isn't just about the powerful exploiting the less fortunate, but also about depleted cultures seeking out cultural vitality and strength. The old European aristocracy was depicted, stereotypically perhaps, as decadent and sickly, their bloodlines weakened by inbreedings and their days consumed by boredom. Hence the pale and frail depiction of vampires sitting idle in their castle. They don't only need to feed off commoners' productivity, but on the primal creative pulse born out of their struggle. You know, it's like people living a cush life have too many options. When survival isn't on the line, there's less urgency to cling to ritual and inherited forms of expression. When you don't need tradition to get through the day, the focus shifts to immediate gratifications and consuming, resulting in a kind of spiritual malaise. Thus, Annie's depiction of vampires, stuck, miserable, unable to draw meaning from the past.
The soul gets stuck in the body. Can't rejoin the ancestors. Cursed to live here with all this hate.
Think of it like Rose in Titanic. She's rich and bored, suffocated by a life of snooty, lame elites, so she decides to slum it down in the lower decks where the poor people get rowdy, dancing and drinking. You know, living. Through a certain cynical lens, Rose is a kind of vampire. She draws Jack in with desire, sucks up that working class vitality, disposes of him, then rejoins the leisure class and goes on with her life. In Sinners, it's basically the same thing. Remmick's band of vampires stand in for the parasitic nature of cultural extraction that black culture has long dealt with. The dominant culture feeds off the culture of the subjugated one, like a vampire. It's worth noting that the first time we see Remmick, he's being chased by a group of Native Americans, another persecuted group with strong cultural traditions that have been stripped and mined for their spiritual value. In that respect, it's quite similar to Get Out. Both films dramatize the haves, feeding off the culture of the have-nots to rejuvenate themselves. But I think the vampires work on another level. It's not only that the mythos conveniently overlaps with social dynamics during a shameful chapter of American history, it's also that it's external. It's an alien mythology originating from European folklore, not Southern black folklore. Throughout the film, Annie is associated with a tradition of African-rooted mysticism called hoodoo. She used roots to protect Smoke while he was bootlegging in Chicago, and initially thinks that their attackers could be haints, or a kind of ghost often tied to places or objects.
This a haint we dealing with, Smoke. Or worse, we gotta keep everybody inside.
But why aren't they haints then? I mean, if the movie immerses us in Southern black cultural traditions, why vampires and not haints or some other black folklore? Well, because Sinners is less concerned with dramatizing a struggle within their own spiritual traditions and more concerned with dramatizing the preservation of those traditions in the face of imposed external mythologies and not only vampirism, but also Christianity. Notice the vampires don't show up to the church singing This Little Light of Mine. Well, other than the fact that it's daytime. Nah, they like the blues. And this is where I think the film gets a bit spicier than Get Out.
Blues. It wasn't forced on us like that religion. We brought this with us from home.
It's magic what we do.
While, yes, Christianity was a profound source of community and solace for black Americans, it's also part of the machinery that stripped away black agency during segregation. It failed to challenge Jim Crow and focused more on spiritual absolution than improving things for blacks on Earth. This tension between resenting and relying on imposed beliefs is also echoed by Remmick.
Long ago, the man who stole my father's land forced these words upon us. I hated those men, but the words still bring me comfort.
Like Christianity, vampirism is an outside mythology imposed by force that promises them a better world.
This world already left you for dead. Won't let you build. Won't let you fellowship. We will do just that. Together.
The message isn't that Christianity is vampiric or parasitic, rather it's about pushing back against imposed narratives and reclaiming control of cultural identity, about letting the homegrown traditions have their moment of recognition, especially when, in the case of the blues, it was dismissed or outright condemned by these imposed doctrines. Sammy's father, a Christian preacher, demands Sammy stop playing the blues.
I want to be free of all this for a day.
To play music for drunkards, philanderers who shirk their responsibilities to their family so they can sweat all over each other.
Warning him that if you keep playing the devil's music, it's going to bring evil into his life.
You keep dancing with the devil. One day it's gonna follow you home.
Moments like this place Sinners in direct conversation with the most iconic myth at the crossroads of music and black folklore, the legend of Robert Johnson. Both take place along the Mississippi Delta in the 30s, and both deal with demonic figures, supernatural talent, and the power of the blues. Robert Johnson, as the story goes, was a struggling young guitarist who mysteriously vanished for a short period, only to re-emerge with talent so astonishing it seemed humanly impossible. The legend spread that he went to the crossroads at midnight, met the devil, and sold his soul for musical greatness. His mysterious death at 27 years old was then widely interpreted as the devil collecting his dues. The myth was often used to dissuade black Christian communities from listening to the blues, which was deemed dangerous and profane. It was called the devil's music, and those who enjoyed it, sinners. At the beginning of the movie, Sammy stumbles into his father's church all beat up, having narrowly survived the vampire's assault. Sammy's father implores him to drop the guitar, to rid himself of the demonic influence of the blues. Smoke, too, tries to convince him to leave the blues behind.
See, your daddy a preacher. You can go and do that. You like making music? Make church music.
But Sammy refuses Smoke's command and clings to the guitar. That refusal is central to the movie's message. The film is, in a sense, a counter-mythology to the Robert Johnson myth. It's not about denying the label of sinner, it's about owning it, reclaiming it, about asserting a mythology where the devil's music is something to be celebrated. The word sinners has for much of American history been associated with moral condemnation, but the movie transforms it from a mark of shame to a badge of endurance. In fact, the film suggests that the blues does something Christianity often fails to do. It meets people where they're at. It doesn't ask for purity, it doesn't demand that you cleanse yourself of desire or indulgence. It makes room for the whole spectrum of human experiences, and recasts a sinner from one who is broken to one who is a survivor. The only time the word sinner is uttered in the movie, it comes from Slim.
I play and I get as much corn liquor as I can drink. Sinner like me, I can't ask for more than that.
He says it without shame or irony. He knows what the church thinks of him. He maybe even knows what the world thinks of him. But he also knows what the blues has to offer. That joy, that communion is enough. And in a world stacked against him, it may be the only taste of freedom available.
Just for a few hours. It was free.
Sinners is about the power of culture to turn suffering into something redemptive. It's about how when systems of justice and freedom fail, art becomes the last sight of resistance. And no symbol in the film captures that more powerfully than Sammy's guitar. At the beginning, Stack tells him the guitar was won in a Chicago card game from none other than Charlie Patton, a foundational figure in Delta blues mythology. Toward the end, Smoke reveals that Stack just made that up. The guitar was actually their father's.
Boy, told you that. Stack. That's our daddy guitar.
While it's tempting to read this as a sentimental moment about the importance of legacy or family lineage or something, it's not quite that. Their father wasn't a beacon of warmth and wisdom, he was abusive.
That mayor knew who our daddy was. Knew he was an evil man.
And according to Stack's account, Smoke killed him one night after a particularly brutal beating.
Y'all really kill him? Nah, we ain't kill him. Smoke did.
Here, the guitar becomes a distilled expression of the blues itself, of using the imagination to create liberation out of unbearable realities. It's a symbol of what Sinners is ultimately about, the radical act of taking something broken and making it sing, as evidenced when Slim fights back tears and turns them into music. The movie ends in triumph because Sammy evades the vampires and endures with the soul of the Delta intact. He carries the blues with him all the way to Chicago, where we see him sharing that music with new audiences, keeping the culture alive through a long and successful career. He didn't beat the system, but he did maintain their only source of resistance from a parasitic force. In the end, Sinners, like the guitar, is a manifestation of the blues. It formally mirrors what the blues has always done for black communities. Faced with the impossibility of material victory, the movie, like the music it celebrates, turns to the imagination. It shows us that sometimes, when all other victories are impossible, cultural resilience is the only real salvation. Hey, y'all, thanks for watching. Don't forget to head to ZocDoc.com/JaredBauer for a free, fast, and easy way to find premium healthcare options, Also, be sure to subscribe because South Park season is still going on and my next movie analysis is on Superman. Again, thank you guys so much for watching and take it easy. Peace.